This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
Vemuram are one of these pedal companies with a little bit of a shady-ish, slightly questionable history. Although, of course, cloning other pedals and working from other people's designs is basically as old as the pedal industry in general. I think even the first Tubescreamer shares quite a lot in common with the Boss OD1, which came slightly before it. So even Ibanez and Boss at the time, or Roland, would have been, I think it'd be fair to say, bouncing ideas kind of off of one another. Vemuram, I think famously or infamously, did come out with this Jan Ray, which has an awful lot of similarities with the well-loved Timmy pedal, which was, you know, sort of designed and made by one guy, Paul Cochrane. And for that reason, I think the Gear page in particular are not huge fans of Vemuram, especially because what they're doing is cloning a pedal and then making it more expensive. I think the acceptable face of cloning is sort of received to be when it's, you know, making something available for cheaper than the thing. If they put a brass enclosure on it and make it more expensive, I think oftentimes people think, well, that's not really cricket. Now, the Overdrive Pro TSV808 was unveiled at Winter NAMM 2019. I feel like it just feels to me like it was longer ago that I saw these coming around, and at the time they were, I think, about £400, and there was something like 400 made for the American market. I think around the world there might be as many as 2,000 units, something relatively small like that. There are less of these in the world than there are clones, interestingly enough. Okay, so this one here is serial number 1288. Myself and Jake, well, actually Jake, he found 2 of these in an Indian store, and they hadn't been used or sold, and he got them for a relatively okay price. It's still the most expensive drive pedal that I've ever bought, something like £800 each after shipping and taxes and import charges. So a bit of a bonkers price. Are these pedals special? I think they are a little bit special, although I did manage to get a fairly close match with a Timmy version 3 to what I could get out of this. So what are they? They are essentially somewhere between a Tubescreamer and a Jan Ray. Tone Geek has actually sort of traced the circuit and created his own version. He says that it is actually distinct from a Tubescreamer and a Jan Ray. So it is actually apparently a unique circuit. The things that it's got going for it that are different to a Tubescreamer, it's got more gain, I think 7 dB extra. You've also got on it these kind of trim pots for saturation and a trim pot for bass, which could be useful. Same controls as a Tubescreamer, and then inside you've got some clipping options. Now, why are these going for crazy money now? There's a couple of reasons. One is obviously supply and demand. People like the idea of this sort of pedal. I think Vemuram, yeah, I think people like the way they look in some ways, and they're obviously trying to be that boutique kind of brand, aren't they? Then the other part of it is that they're difficult to come by because there were only 2,000, I think, maybe even less than that made. So for that reason, when they do come up for sale, people sometimes snap them up. Why are they on Reverb for upwards of sort of £1,200? Well, that can be put down to the John Mayer effect. So there was some amount of time that he was messing around with one of these. I think that time has now passed, and for that reason, I think that's why you're seeing these units kind of hanging around on Reverb for that £1,200 price point for a bit longer. Are they worth that kind of money? I don't think so. Could they still be a sensible investment? Possibly, given that they are rarer than the Klon. I also don't think they're as well known as the Klon though, but in some ways, if John Mayer was to use one for a bit longer, or they cropped up on his board again, I think you would start to see that price creep up. However, like the Klon has a bit more of a legendary status beyond just John Mayer. Talking of John Mayer, my other favourite Tubescreamer is the Ibanez TS10. Gary Moore used one of these boys, Steve Ray Vaughan. And so I did do a little bit of, you know, let's just see these things close or not. and what I found was that this just seems to have quite a bit more gain and maybe a bit more clarity. This is my other favourite Tubescreamer in the world, but I do think this actually next to it probably does sound even a little bit better. The Ibanez TS10 is not really crazy special, but it is a bit different than most other Tubescreamers circuit wise. It has a few unique things going on. In any case, next to each other and in a mix, I think you probably find them to be quite comparable. This does have more gain, so for single coil pickups I quite like being able to push that on a bit more. If I was to recommend you a pedal which could do this sort of thing without an £800, £1,200 price tag, it would probably be something either a Tubescreamer or a Timmy. I think a Timmy pedal for me might even be a little bit more versatile than a Tubescreamer. That might be the route I'd go down. Or even if you can stomach the Vemuram brand, the basic Jan Ray is also pretty cool and not vastly dissimilar from a Tubescreamer anyway. So in the end, I don't necessarily think that I'd go out there and say you need to find one of these. Probably it'd be a little bit difficult to anyway, but I do think it's one of those pedals where you plug it in, it does have something to it. It is a really special sounding pedal, I think. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. Probably the coolest pedal that Vemuram made, I think. For me, that sounds really good, and at least it's not a direct clone of an existing pedal. Pretty cool little thing. Yeah, sounds good too. Let me know your thoughts on that. I think that might be one of the best Tubescreamers in the world. I don't know if anyone's tried the gold or the hand-wired ones. Those might be ones that I might try. The TS9 obviously is the gold, and it's no different to another TS9. It just looks kind of cooler. I think the hand-wired might be slightly different. I haven't tried a real 808, but that might be one that I might try and get my hands on. But in essence, a Tubescreamer is a Tubescreamer, isn't it? And even these two examples sound pretty close to each other, I thought, in the comparison there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to like and subscribe. Tubescreamers.